Welcome to Humankind. In this video I'm going to take you through a standard game of 300 turns, but not the whole thing. Of course, we're focusing on the first 10 turns, arguably the most important turns in the game. Let's begin. So here I am in a random world. The first thing I like to do, if in doubt, zoom out. Great advice. So let's do that. Why? To try and see where I am in the world. Sometimes you'll spawn in the polar regions or very close to them, and that gives you a good idea. Maybe I shouldn't go to the north where there's nothing, I should explore to the south. In this case, we're placed fairly centrally, so if in doubt, no doubts, let's zoom back in. Next, we need to look at our local geography. Okay, we've looked at the world as a whole, well, as much as we can see of it anyway, considering it's literally the land of one long white cloud. Now let's focus on our local geography. The most important thing, actually, though, is our movement points on this very first turn. We have 4. That means we can move 4 tiles. I've got resource yields on, down the bottom here, but not the hex grid. I don't really need that. If we step onto a river, it will use all of our remaining movement points. So that would be a really bad first turn, okay? Bear that in mind. The other thing that you'll want to be looking out for is terrain like forest, which has, as you can see down in the bottom left here, a base movement cost of 2. That means you'll only be able to move 2 tiles this turn instead of 4. So we're going to try and seek out flat terrain, and ideally we'd also try and find some elevation. The higher up we can move our unit, the more of the land we'll be able to see. So I'm going to avoid the river, move along here. I was hoping for a hill to step up on, and actually I've found one. But here's something more important that we can do. Destroy this sanctuary. I have 1 movement point left. If I move here, I can still ransack, okay? It's important to note that our army actions, these are only movement points, not action points. We can still carry out actions after we move completely. In this case, I'm going to ransack the sanctuary to provide 5 food to my dude, and then end the turn. You'll see the 5 food has added on to the 20 required to get my second unit. Not a bad first turn. Honestly, not a terrible one. What I'm going to do now, as I said last turn, is try and find some flat high ground so that I can get a survey, a good opportunity to look across the land. I have 3 movement points left. Where do I want to go? I have 3 objectives, and believe it or not, I can actually complete all 3 of them if I play this turn right. Firstly, step up onto some high ground. 1 movement point. Okay, great. I have 2 left to go. Ideally, I would then move to this tile, but that would leave me pretty trapped. So what I'm going to do instead, actually, is say, okay, I won't do that this turn. What I will do, though, is grab this food. Fantastic. We found wild berries, which only provided 5 food. Discoveries in Humankind will provide at minimum of 5, and sometimes much more, especially if you can get discoveries on rivers, so bear that in mind. For now, though, I've got 1 movement point left. I'm going to move actually back the way I came so that I have more options next turn. And then, as I said last time, we can still carry out an action. In this case, I'm going to fight a deer. In Humankind game, in case you don't know, in the Neolithic era, you will come across deer and also potentially some more aggressive mammoths. The mammoths you won't be able to beat in one-on-one combat, assuming everything is equal, but you will be able to take down a deer. A couple of important things to note, and you'll see me do it as I'm literally playing this out live. I'm going to move on to the high ground tiles. That will give me a combat advantage over this dumb deer. And there we go. 5 food and also 5 influence. A currency that will be important to us even in the Neolithic era, as we look to establish cheaper outposts before we move through. More on that in a little bit. Welcome to turn 3. I'm a little bit disappointed that we still only have 1 unit. Usually by now I would prefer to have multiple hunting parties, but we're very close. Take a look, 15 out of 20. We just need 1 more food discovery and we'll be set. We also, thanks to picking up 5 influence, can now use our claim territory action on this unit and start placing our outposts in this era. I'm not going to place it here. We will talk a little bit about outpost placement, although I do have a few videos on the channel already about that. But just by clicking this action, we can get a good feeling for where some of the high yield tiles are, right? Down this way on this river, or up this way where I haven't explored. That maybe incentivizes me to move that way. It's a difficult move though, as you can see. My actual end goal for this turn is either to find a food discovery or land myself on this river, okay? And I can do that going this way, or I can do that going this way. My other alternative would be to run around the coastline here, but it doesn't finish me on the river this turn, so I'm not interested. I'm going to move to the high ground so I can survey the land as much as possible, and unfortunately, forego my extra movement so that I can get onto this river. Okay, so we're into turn 4, I'm on the river. That means that I can sail along it and take no extra movement penalties other than the standard movement cost of 1. I need to explore some more of this world. I need to find some food discoveries so that we can get more units. So instead of placing down outposts right now, which I could have done, I'm going to continue my exploration. There is a food discovery. And it's a tricky one to get to, but we're going to move towards it because it also has horses. Now, new turn, let's use our movement points to get up onto this high ground and survey some more of this land. I can see that these cliff faces make getting down here for this food pretty difficult. So, what I'm going to do, still with only 1 unit, by the way, could consider a reroll here. I'll jump myself onto the river with my last movement point, and we'll survey the rest of these opportunities. As we shift through into turn 6, some food has appeared right behind me. At the start of turn 6, we have a food magically appearing behind us. Finally! Better late than never, our first discovery. So that is my top priority now. I'm going to move towards that. Brilliant. We've harvested these nuts, and we've got an extra unit. I'm going to select this 1 unit in the hunting party and separate it out from the rest. It has now got its eye on a scientific discovery as well. Take a look at this. Let's move on to that next turn because we're just fallen short of it and send this unit towards the horses, okay? I've still got 3 movement points left. It's just enough to get me down onto this river, removing any penalties from next turn. Speaking of next turn, welcome to turn 7. The clock is ticking. First up, this unit up here has got a discovery in its sights. 1 science and 5 influence. These curiosities will deliver between 1 and 3 science, and if we can get to 10 out of 10, we'll complete our knowledge star. This is generally a pretty good idea, and if you can, I would advise you hang around in the Neolithic era until you complete this star. The rest of them are more optional. You'll get some fame if you want it, but this one is really important. Unfortunately, a river has trapped this unit here and prevented it from moving to the food. It's probably not the end of the world. I'm going to try and use up a little bit of its movement just to reveal a few more of these tiles up this way, and then bounce it onto the river to end its turn. Back down here on my other unit, I'm looking for, again, actually probably, even though it's tempting to go down here and fight this deer and explore this, I know that there's a food discovery here. And I also know that horses are here. And horses are one of the things that I try and settle my first or second territories around. They're the first strategic resource that you'll unlock and get access to in the tech tree, and building on them will provide you with some powerful early game extra science. So, as we move through to turn 8, let me jump on top of the horses, grab these nuts for a whopping 10 food, and I'm going to continue this way and actually jump onto this river because we'll probably look to settle this territory next turn. Now that I know that it has 1, a luxury resource for me, horses, fantastic, and it also has this luxury salt, which will provide +5 food on my cities. Meanwhile, to the north, of course, we're going to keep exploring with this unit. It's found some more food, and in this case, I'm going to go for the food on the river, not the food over here. Why? Because food on river will provide me with more sustenance. Take a look at that. Freshwater harvest provides me with 15 food. Very good. Because I know there's a guaranteed food discovery back this way, I am going to backtrack and grab that as I bounce through here into turn 9, jump onto that. Fantastic. Wild berries will now give me 2 units. And again, we'll repeat the same process we did last time. Select one of them and break it away. It will have a full suite of movement points on offer, 4 out of 4, providing you've got it from discoveries and not from fighting animals. This has also actually enabled me to find a natural wonder, Lake Baikal. I'm really glad that I did. I'd hoped that I'd find one in this video, which wasn't scripted. Of course, I'm just playing through this like you would to try and make this as relatable as possible. Here we've found Lake Baikal. If we can establish an outpost here, which could be a good idea, particularly in the early game, because we'd receive +5 influence and some stability and money as well. Unfortunately, it's across the pond, and I won't be able to get there, so I'll ignore that for the time being. We also have a crucial event. In this case, it's Lost Souls, but you might encounter many others. Here, I get 2 options. I can either get a new army, or my existing armies can get an extra +2 land movement speed. Neither is necessarily better or worse than the other, but I do think that extra units is great. In this case, for me, it's particularly true because I feel a bit short on them. At +2 movement on these 3 existing units will give me 6 extra movement points a turn, assuming I can use them all, which is great. But because I'm so short on units, in fact, really quite short, I'm going to choose to take the extra one because I think that will give me better map coverage, and I'm not worried about their maintenance as I start to think about placing my outposts. In fact, before that, though, we can get one on turn 9 with this unit. I'm going to click the Claim Territory function, and a 10-5 is incredibly good. Usually I recommend a 10-10 split. That's a great territory if you can get 10 food and 10 industry. Of course, if you choose territories with more industry, they will be built faster. More food, you'll get population faster. In this case, a 10-15 looks super tasty. I'm not really incentivized to place it anywhere else. Sometimes it can be a good idea to try and place it close to a resource if you want to build around that resource, i.e. this horses, for example. Once I improve it, scientific districts near it will get increased benefit. So if I settle here, I can build scientific districts around it very early. In this case, though, I'm not going to get too min-maxy max gamer moves. I'm going to move it onto the recommended spot, which also had some food waiting for me. Fantastic. That extra food has given me an extra population, which of course we'll absolutely take advantage of, but for the time being, we've settled this outpost. Great. And here we are, we've made it to turn 10, and I've achieved every objective that I wanted to, except for the knowledge star. I could hang around in the Neolithic era for even longer, and try and find more curiosities like Deez nuts, but preferably scientific ones, right? Because that's where the real value add is here for me. If I don't find a lot of science soon, I will bail on it though. Here, I had another opportunity to get between 1 and 3 science. Unfortunately, I again only got 1. This unit is going to place my second outpost. I'm going to put it adjacent to my first one so that I can attach it when I turn it into a city. And this territory looks very good. Why? Well, it has access to the coast, and crucially, to this coastal water tiles. That'll be great for harbours in future. And secondly, and more importantly, it has not 1 but 2 silk, a great resource that provides industry to cities. If you get a bit bored moving your units around, you can always click the auto explore button, but bear in mind this function is nowhere near as powerful as it was when humankind first came out. The distinct lack of scientific discoveries has actually made it, for me, kind of a no-brainer that I should hang around in the Neolithic era a little bit longer. While mammoths are a difficult beast to fight with just 1 unit, there are some instances where it's possible to pull it off. I'm going to show you here because I need the yield that these big juicy boys provide. So, with 1 unit, I'm going to defend on this high ground tile, while the mammoth stands not only on low ground, but also you'll see here on a river. Hovering over it, you'll see I deal reasonable damage to it, having already defended 1 turn against its aggression. And just like that, I am able, again, only thanks to the terrain. I want to make that really clear. This thing would beat me in a fair fight, but because it was an unfair fight and I was able to game it to my advantage, I defeated it, and that yielded me a whopping 20 food and 20 influence. These mammoths are literally walking bank accounts, and you should raid them if you can. Grabbing that 20 influence this turn was really important to me because establishing my second outpost will cost 20 influence. It's a mammoth's worth of influence, right? I'm going to place it down in a reasonable tile. Again, I'm not too concerned here. The 14-9 looks great because I remember that this territory has slightly more industry than food. So if they merge together, I'll get a reasonable balance of the two in future. Having 2 outposts established is one of my personal checkboxes for moving through to the next era in an ideal world. The only other tick I wasn't able to cross was this one, the knowledge star. I will, however, here at the end of the video show you what you should do when you complete that. Because the Neolithic era is so good for generating food and extra units, don't be afraid to hang around a bit longer like me if you need to. And after an incredibly unlucky run of trying to complete this dang knowledge star, here it is. The event that I was after, a Tribe's Legacy. This event is guaranteed when you complete it. What does it do? Well, you can get +1 industry per population on city or outpost. Great. +1 food per population on city or outpost. Great. Or what is generally the best mathematical option because of the way the game calculates extra population, excess food and industry, and a whole lot of complicated things that I won't delve into too much here because A, I'm an idiot, and B, I wouldn't want to put you wrong, and it's probably outside the scope of this video. You should usually choose storytellers. +1 science per population is firstly incredibly useful early on. Early technologies can be the difference, make or break in a war. They can also help you attach resources and harbors and all sorts of things way faster. And, as I say, the complicated or somewhat weird mathematics behind it makes it so that storytellers is generally the go-to. I'm going to grab that bad boy, and that completes my Neolithic era. You should generally be able to do this in the first 10 turns, but as you can see, it does require a bit of luck. There's a little bit of luck involved. You may not get the perfect start every time. I like to go for the 2 outposts and then choose my culture and move through. Choosing a culture is, of course, outside the scope of this video. There are plenty more on the channel, and if you'd like me to provide some more updated and accurate advice on this, I'm happy to do so. Let me know below, and I'll see you next time.